Have you ever walked away from your car only to stop, turn around, and look at it one more time? Maybe it's an old sedan from your college days, a motorcycle that's seen better years, or a rusty project car that everyone keeps telling you to sell. People assume they know why you're holding on to it. It's nostalgia, it's sentimental value. You just can't let go. What if your attachment to that vehicle has very little to do with the past and everything to do with who you are today? Because psychology suggests there's something much deeper going on, something that most people never notice. And by the end of this video, I'll reveal the rare psychological trait shared by people who refuse to sell their old vehicles, even when logic says they should. Let's begin. Psychologists often talk about emotional attachment, but vehicle enthusiasts experience something slightly different. Let's call it mechanical empathy, is the ability to form a meaningful relationship with machines through interaction, effort, and shared experiences. To most people, a car is transportation. To you, it's a witness. It watched you leave your hometown. It carried you through heartbreaks you don't talk about anymore. The interesting thing isn't always distinguish between emotional experiences involving people and emotional experiences involving objects. When an object becomes deeply life events, the brain stores parts of those memories together. In other words, you aren't attached to the metal. Yeah, you aren't attached to the metal. You're attached to what the metal represents, and that creates a psychological profile. Let's explore it. Most people get an old vehicle and notice flaws. You notice chapters, the scratch on the door, the faded dashboard, the worn-out seat. Each imperfection acts like a bookmark in your memory. Neuroscientists call this associative memory. The brain links physical objects to emotional experiences. Your brain instantly accesses those memories. The car becomes a living archive. That's why selling it feels strangely uncomfortable. Not because you're losing transportation, because you're losing a physical doorway to your own story. You value process over consumption. Modern culture teaches us to replace things. New phone, new laptop, new car. But people with mechanical empathy operate differently. They repair, maintain, and improve. Psychologically, this creates something called the more time, energy, and skill you invest into something, the more meaningful it becomes. Every late-night repair, every frustrating breakdown, every success experience become embedded into the vehicle itself. The machine transforms into proof of your persistence. Selling it would feel like erasing evidence of your growth. 3. You find comfort in the predictable. Here's something isn't exciting because it's perfect. It's comforting because it's familiar. You know every sound, every vibration, every quirk. You know exactly how's best on certain roads. Your brain craves predictability because predictability creates psychological safety. In an unpredictable world, familiar machine becomes an anchor. Not because you're afraid of change, but because familiarity reduces mental noise. And that brings us to an even deeper reason. 4. You crave authenticity. Many enthusiasts dislike modern vehicles for reasons they can't fully explain. They say things like, it just doesn't feel the same. What they're really describing is authenticity. Old vehicles demand participation. You feel the steering. You hear the engine. You engage with the machine. Psychologists call this embodied experience. Your senses become fully involved. The interaction feels real. And in a world increasingly dominated by screens, automation, and algorithms, that authenticity becomes incredibly valuable. The vehicle becomes one of the last places where cause and effect still feel honest. 5. You use machines as emotional regulation. Many people don't realize that driving can function as a coping mechanism, not an unhealthy one, a healthy one. After stress, after disappointment, you go for a drive. Why? Because repetitive mechanical actions calm the nervous system, the sound of shifting gears, the focus required to drive. These activities reduce mental clutter. Your attention moves away from anxious thoughts and into the present moment. For some people, meditation happens on a cushion. For others, it happens behind the wheel. And there's still one final reason most people never talk about. We'll get there in a moment. You resist disposable culture. People often assume holding on to an old vehicle. Actually, the opposite may be true. You understand something many consumers don't. Not every strong mechanical empathy often reject disposable thinking, often reject disposivity, durability, craftsmanship, character. Psychologically, this reflects a long-term orientation. You evaluate things based on meaning rather than novelty, and that's becoming increasingly rare. Now let's reveal the deeper truth. The reason you refuse to sell your old car isn't nostalgia, at least not primarily. The real reason is identity preservation. Every human being builds an internal story, a narrative explaining who they are, where they've been, and what they've survived. Your vehicle occupies a unique position within that story. It represents freedom, growth, independence, healing, persistence. It reminds you of a version of yourself that fought through challenges and kept moving forward. Selling the vehicle can sometimes feel like closing a chapter you're not ready to lose, not because you're living in the past, because the machine helps you remember who you became. The rare trait I promised at the beginning, the traits share sell their old vehicles. It's called legacy consciousness. Legacy consciousness is the tendency of meaningful objects because they represent continuity across time. You don't see the vehicle as transportation, evidence that your journey happened, evidence that your struggles mattered, evidence that part of your story still exists. And that's something very few people understand. So the next time someone asks why you still keep that old car, remember, it's probably not nostalgia. It's meaning, it's mechanical empathy, and maybe it's a reminder of who you are when the world isn't watching. Now I want to ask you a psychology question. Do you keep your old vehicle because it reminds you of where you've been, or because it reminds you of who you've become? Tell me your story in the comments. Until next time, keep driving, keep reflecting.